Hi, we would like to introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit about our story, our goals, and mission. Carrie and I, Ken, began our love affair long before we met. As children, we fell in love with horses. As so many boys and girls do, horses were transformative to the individuals we later became and how our paths would cross so many years later. A story that has had many chapters for Carrie that included Morgan's, where for me, my only experience was through stall neighbors at shows. For my story was filled with a different breed, the Belgian, and for the better part of my life, breeding and showing Belgians was the centermost in our lives. Everything we did was touched by horses. It would come as no surprise that breeding would be a foundation of my future plans. In 2016, with my father struggling with the effects of Alzheimer's, the conversation between Carrie and I turned towards starting to think about our future and how we would continue my father's legacy. In 2017, by combining our middle names, Joe and Glenn, JoGlenn Farms was born, and the path was to combine our paths to create our future. It would be a foundation around sport horses, versatile, capable of many disciplines. Over the last 4 decades, in addition to breeding Belgians, my family bred warm bloods, in which I retained a couple Belgian thoroughbred Cleveland Bay broodmares, and then we added a Morgan mare that, although found her way to a meat sale, had great qualities and New York bloodlines of noteworthiness. Soon we found we were looking for a stallion that fit our vision of what we wanted, wasn't type or style, but a vision in addition to an aptitude to a discipline my wife was most drawn to. She had many Morgans unlike me. That vision search included Facebook groups, individuals. I wanted to educate myself, reading, learning, listening, and yet I was focused on my vision of what the horse I would like to contribute and promote. After hours of research, Carrie would describe it another way. It wasn't planned, but I found this stallion, Harwich Attila. He had his own Facebook page promoting his legacy and heritage as a Lippet and his success in the discipline Carrie was most interested in, eventing. I found myself interested in him as a potential for our future, our foundation of our vision. He was beyond our budget, 9 hours away, but with a will, there's a way. Long story short, we made it work with his breeder, Michelle Scott, and Attila was destined for New York. We didn't seek out a Lippet, but a Lippet we have. He was our vision, not for being a Lippet, but for what we sought. We will be using him to produce sport horses, versatile, capable of many disciplines. Fast forward 2 years to 2019, and the addition of our first 2 foals. A special filly, JoGlenn A. Corona, a half Lippet, as she will and forever be our first. As you can imagine, this was the realization of a dream. A path forward where we see a future full of Lippets, half Lippets, and crosses with our Lippet stallion by the name of Harwich Attila, which you may know as he has close to 1,100 followers on Facebook, all of whom are supporting our goals and taking him to great heights and achievements. I would be remiss, though, if I didn't talk to you about my family, farming, this farm, and our thoughts about the future. The Estes story began as descendants of Richard Estes from Dover, England. He came to Boston in 1684, and from the Society of Friends or Quakers, which settled into the Genesee Valley region around 1820. Allen Estes brought his family to the wilderness of Livingston County and established Honey Locust Farms in 1832 in Caledonia, where the family farms today. As a footnote, the homestead has the largest honey locusts in all of New York. Allen happens to be my great-great-great-grandfather. Fast forward to the 1950s when my father and uncle took over the farm and continued until 2016, when the farm was divided in two, unfortunately the family too. In 2017, as I mentioned, with my father passing away due to complications from Alzheimer's and leaving a big hole, as I mentioned, Carrie and I started JoGlenn Farms with the hopes of preserving, protecting, and maintaining my father's blood, sweat, and tears. Our farm's history is similar to my family's, as the farm, JoGlenn Farms, circa 1832, referred to as the Wonderland Farm, appears in documents in 1903 around the death of Abraham Cameron. It is believed that Abraham commissioned the construction of the Wells Barn, the main horse barn. He owned the farm from 1882 until his death in 1903. The historic chronological ownership went from John Cameron to Duncan Cameron to Abraham Cameron to Duncan Everett Cameron to Albert and Vera Town. That's 1941 to 1951, when my family, my grandfather and grandmother, Robert and Dorothy Estes, bought the farm. Then my father, Kenneth and Robert Estes, and now to its present owner, Elizabeth Estes, my mother. In our family for now, 68 years, and my home for 51 or 52. The records are challenging because of multiple parcels joining and separating through families and through time. It's not easy to decipher. But I'll tell you a story about the assorted history of my home and my farm and the family of James Cameron and the heirs as they divided the farm at the time in half, which separated down the middle of a barn, where half the barn was owned by one family and the other half was owned by the other. That is still the case to this day. Our story, though, it is in his first chapter, with the introduction about the legacy of being a sixth generation in agriculture. We currently breed horses, Lippets, Morgans, and sport horses, as I mentioned, as well as compete and market horses, hay, and a lifestyle. We envision and plan our business around Nojo Nerhuru, taking in the farm. You may have heard about forest therapy. We believe living on a farm can have the same effect and all that it has to offer therapeutically. As small farms die, families are become farther removed from the farm, and we hope to create a place that feels like when our generations or our parents, when everyone had a farm to go to. We hope to always be a part of Livingston County as JoGlenn Farms. Visitors are always welcome, and watch for an upcoming open house planned at JoGlenn Farms to see our historic barn and our pride and joy our horses, forged from America's past, devoted to the Morgan's future. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the video on our farm's virtual tour. At the time this picture was taken, this was our complete herd. So starting from left to right, we have Inkie Dinky Doo. He was a purebred thoroughbred rescue. Next to him in the foreground is Candles Carry a Tune. She's a Morgan mare. In the background, kind of behind the fence, is Valamar's Harmony Grace. She's a full lippet mare. Next is Honey Locust Beverly. Beverly is a second generation, born on the farm, Cleveland Bay thoroughbred. My father's breeding. Next to her are two siblings, both mares. Willow is in the background, and in the foreground is Solecist. They are Belgian Cleveland Bay thoroughbreds. In the background, over the wood fence, that's Harwich Attila. He's a full lippet. Next is our Belgian gelding, Honey Locust Matt. He was a first generation Belgian born on the farm. Next to him is Roslyn. Roslyn is a Percheron Tennessee Walker mare. And then we have Ike and Cam. Both are Morgan geldings. And that was our herd at the time.
Gary, coming into the water complex.
87, clear at 12. 86, clear at 6.
Carrie and I would like to thank you for watching, and hopefully someday you'll be able to come and visit live and in person.